Hello, friends. This is Dr. John WorldPeace coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's November the 27th, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time. Thanksgiving is over. Time to go back to work. This commentary is titled Suspension of Russia's Membership in the United Nations. Greetings to the world human society. I've heard the voice of the Lord as follows. It's become painfully obvious that the United Nations has failed in its prime directive to stop wars in the world human society. Presently, and for the last 9 months, the Russian Federation has carried out a non-stop campaign to bomb the Ukrainians into submission, to kill as many Ukrainian freedom fighters and civilians as possible, to cause as much misery to the citizens of Ukraine as possible. North Korea and Iran have supported this effort by directly supplying weapons for crimes against humanity to aid Russia in their determination to achieve the surrender of Ukrainians to the Russian Federation, or every Ukrainian man, woman, and child's blood is soaked into the ground. Presently, the Russians are trying to cut off all power to Ukraine with the intent that the entire nation of Ukrainians freeze in the dark. Think about this during your Christmas cheer. At some point, as a last result, Russia will bomb the nuclear plant at Zaporizhia and intentionally create another Chernobyl, crime against humanity. What's the solution? The solution is simple. The solution is radical. All attempts at a resolution for 9 months have failed. And they have failed because the world human society living outside the Ukrainian border are going about business as usual and presently escaping to the World Soccer Games in Qatar, even as the fossil fuels are burning down the Garden of Eden, a world human society extinction event in progress. Last month, the nations of the world met and decided to do nothing to curb the use of fossil fuels. They agreed to send some money to the unfortunate souls who have no control over their national and personal extinction. No matter, they are in some cases already collateral damage of Russia's death by starvation in those countries already in progress. I heard the voice of the Lord ask, "Who cares?" There was no response. Just the promise to send some money, which more than likely will not happen. I consider Joe Biden to be the supreme head of state among all other heads of state in the world of nations. America is billed as the light of the world, and Biden is its elected president. It is incumbent on Joe Biden to be the catalyst to end the ongoing genocide and other crimes against humanity going on in Ukraine, as in now. Excuse me. Here's what Joe Biden is charged to do. I'm giving instructions to Joe Biden because he has no clue about how to stop the Russians without a nuclear war. For 9 months, he has made understandable and reasonable efforts to stop the Russians. Those efforts have failed. While the world prepares to celebrate Christmas, the Ukrainians are preparing to die by freezing in the dark. Here's your solution, Joe Biden. Call the Secretary General of the United Nations and demand that he set a vote of the United Nations General Assembly for Friday, December 2nd, this week, regarding suspending the membership in the United Nations of the Russian Federation until they stop their crimes against humanity in the Ukraine and remove every Russian soldier from Ukraine soil, including the Crimea. Joe Biden will, in addition, sign an executive order for all Americans working at the United Nations, effective immediately, to begin closing all offices and preparing to abandon the United Nations as a failed global political experiment established after World War II 70 years ago. President Biden will demand a vote be held every day for 7 days, starting on December 2nd, to see if there is any hope of ending the war in Ukraine. If not, then the nations who have joined the United States in withdrawing from the United Nations will immediately gather to establish a coalition of a 21st century United Nations to redraw the alliances between them, like-minded nations, and the exclusion of nations who refuse to hold Russia accountable for ongoing crimes against humanity in the Ukraine. This will effectively terminate the failed United Nations that presently exist. So there's a solution. If we begin World War III, so what? Within 10 years, the world human society will have doomed itself to an irreversible path of self-destruction by refusing to deal with climate change. Better to die by a bullet or bomb with your kids from a global war than an irreversible global assault on the world human society by fossil fuels and the slow death it will bring. If the first truly global civilization is going to self-destruct, the sooner the better. If the Russians are not out of Ukraine by Christmas, then the world human society, not God, will have willed its own annihilation. Anyone with eyes can see the numbers of thought to be invincible ancient civilizations that are laying in ruins all over the earth. So in the 21st century, the first truly global civilization will collapse in apathy that will foster all facets of global death, preceded by significant pain and suffering. In time, new nations will form and come together out of necessity, and the process of trying to live together will begin again. When the Republicans take over the House in January and cut off funds to Ukraine and begin to attempt to take revenge on the Democrats to cover up their own insanity in electing and supporting Donald Trump and his traitorous acts, then the great American democratic experiment will have failed after 250 years because the nature of human beings, Americans, to prefer death over toleration and inclusiveness. If I'm a minority of one, the above truth is the end of the world society. I'm not like any of you on this planetary ship of fools. This is Dr. John WorldPeace. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas. But in the meantime, as things stand now, children, parents, grandparents are going to be dying just like they have for 9 months because nobody knows what to do. Amazing.